This podcast contains gambling references. You know the score. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-858-858 or your local state gambling helpline.
9 podcasts.
This is Six Tackles with Gus, with Matthew Thompson and Gus Gould.
G'day there, welcome to Six Tackles with Gus. We're down to 4 teams left in the competition. Spots in the grand final at stake this weekend, Friday and Saturday night. Must watch TV here on 9. On the podcast today, Gus's predictions from the start of the year. We're going back in the time capsule to see how accurate you were, my friend. You might be surprised.
I can't remember what I said.
Can't remember what you said yesterday. We'll have a look at the 2 prelims in depth. We'll have a look at some NRLW finals as well. And I have got reams of Ask Gus questions. I'm going to ask as many as I can today because everyone's very excited. So we're not going to do a preview yet, but a lot of people are tipping Penrith, a few tipping Souths. But the more I think about Friday night's game, Cowboys versus Eels, I got no idea.
Haven't you?
Just generally, but particularly about this game.
I think I got an idea.
Do you?
Yeah. I've got a theory anyway.
All right. Before we get into our rugby league chat, I nearly died yesterday.
Why is that?
I nearly walked on a brown snake on the golf course.
Yeah, you got to watch him on the golf course.
Well, where I play my golf, it's out in the Blacktown district, and
Yeah.
I was putting my score in, walking between the 10th and 11th holes, and I look up, and less than 2 metres away was a big brown snake just sunning itself. I think I saw him at the same time he saw me because he kind of slithered back into the scrub. But, mate.
They're as scared of you as you are of them.
Well, no.
They're not going to come near you.
No. I was far more scared of him than he was of me.
No.
My underpants.
Got to be careful, though. You know, if you hit your ball in the woods, leave it there. Just
Leave it.
Take a penalty. Move on.
Mate, this thing, it was as thick as your fist, and I reckon it would have been 6 foot.
Yeah.
Have you seen many on the golf course? You'd have seen a heap.
Yeah, I have. I actually... one of my last ever games with my father, who passed away some time ago, but we used to play regularly out at Camden Lakeside, and I was on the 8th tee there one day, and I was playing really good, and I got on the tee and I stood behind the ball with my driver and put the driver down behind the ball, and he said, "Don't move." And I thought he was going to give me a lesson because he was always giving me lessons. I thought I might have been aiming wrong or my shoulders were wrong. I said, "What?" And he said, "Just don't move." I said, "Yeah, what?" He said, "Don't move." And as he said that, I looked down and there was a black snake going between my legs, heading off onto the other side of the tee. He said, "He won't hurt you if you don't move." I thought he was going to give me a golf lesson. Yeah. So I was standing there looking, what's my alignment? What's my grip?
He gave you a life lesson.
Yeah, he said, "Don't move." The black snake just slithered between my legs and off it went.
I'm terrified of snakes. Absolutely terrified of them.
Yeah, you won't see too many.
Oh, a few human ones. I got a rumour for you. I've been doing radio this week. Had a bloke write into me.
I don't deal in rumours.
Well, I got one for you anyway. Bloke writes into me and says he lives out at Ropes Crossing, which is out Penrith Way. Saw David Fifita in the local cafe.
Yeah.
He reckons David Fifita's going to the Panthers instead of Viliami Kickout. Do you reckon they got enough money under the cap?
Wait on. Oh, big David Fifita.
David Fifita from the Gold Coast.
I thought you meant one of the other Fifita brothers.
No. Big David Fifita was getting a coffee at Ropes Crossing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
You got any rumours for me?
No, I don't know what affiliation he would have with the area out there, but yeah, that's interesting.
Maybe he was just.
He was with nobody in a Panther tracksuit, was he?
My spy hasn't told me that much.
It might have been a Parramatta tracksuit.
Maybe.
Might have been a Dragon tracksuit.
Well, the Dragons are interested in getting him. That's he's got another year with the Gold Coast, and they've weighed in for the year after. I'm wondering, given the amount of money he's on, would the Titans be interested in? Would they be interested in cashing out on a player like him and reinvesting somewhere where they might need? They've
probably got more important needs. You go back in time when they first signed him. I said it was an irresponsible signing, not the player, not his talent. It was an irresponsible amount of money for a back rower with such limited experience. And I gave a few examples of why it was a bad deal, and I said it would end up, stifling them, and I don't know that it's going to produce any better results, which is the way it's turned out. Now, that's not David Fifita's fault. David's a very talented player, and he's a little bit up and down with his form at the moment, but so too is the team. But it actually caused problems with the whole player market, with the values in the market. When you get an outlier purchase like that, where someone goes on and pays, a ridiculous amount of money for a young back rower, then the other back rowers, forwards, halves, 5/8s, fullbacks in the competition say, well, if he's worth that, what am I worth?
So it's a false economy.
It created a whole false economy and a whole false expectation. It was an irresponsible signing on the money perspective for the game itself. And that comes from desperation of not having development programs to bring young talent through, that you're constantly trying to recruit, a couple of wins to save your job, or to save the board, or, to save from the criticism you're getting from the members. And, they make knee-jerk decisions based on emotion and overpay players, and that affects the market. That the unfettered movement of players between NRL clubs and doing it 12 months in advance, it's a stupid system, and it creates a lot more problems than it does, and it certainly it gives the player manager all the power in the negotiation, and the desperate club can be talked into paying ridiculous money, and it's not going to help them. You might every now and then grab a player that wins you a couple more games, but in the end it doesn't help you. And I said at the time, that was an irresponsible monetary purchase, that one, and here they are looking as though they're trying to cash him in and go elsewhere because they've got other priorities.
Well, but I wonder whether, given the amount of money he's on, are they even able to cash out on him? I mean, they'd need a club to pick up a fair whack of his salary.
Yeah,
he'd be close to the highest paid player in the game.
I don't know about that now, but, well, yeah, he's certainly up there. I'd imagine he's in the top 5 or 6 on that sort of money. But, what's David Fifita now worth now? What's he worth? If you were going to buy David Fifita, if he was off contract and you had no history of what he'd been paid before and what he'd done, looking at his football, what do you think he's worth now? They've been playing him off the bench.
Yeah.
What's he worth?
Yeah. So
what would you pay for him?
Oh, I don't know the salary caps. I mean, 600-700.
No, forget the salary cap.
600-700.
So you think you'd pay 600,000 or 700,000 for what reason? Because he's going to win you games?
Well, I'm guessing. I'm guessing that's what.
Well, I think if you're paying a player $600,000 or $700,000, you're expecting him to contribute to 50-60% win percentage, for the team. He'd have to be considered.
What are you saying? He's not even worth that at the moment.
Well, I'm just saying his results don't say that.
So a club would say, would only look at his current market value and be prepared to contribute that to the contract.
Yeah, because he's got a contract with the club for all that money. If they wanted to move him,
they'd have to pay $800,000.
They'd have to pay the bulk of what it is. Now, someone might go out and pay him $700,000 or $800,000. I don't know. They might if they thought he could help them. But if you're going to be paying a fellow that amount of money, you want to be having a fair contribution into a fair winning percentage for you in that. But the media and the media doesn't help with this. He's $1 million player. He's $1 million. There's a very, very few $1 million players in this game. Very few $1 million players that actually contribute to a high percentage win ratio for your team. Now you can justify it with other things: membership, crowds, marketing, sponsorship, and all those sort of things. And you can try to say, well, it's helped us with this and this and that, and sometimes it does. But if you're failing, it doesn't make any difference whether you've got a bloke on 1.2 million or not.
Yeah. So this is really interesting. So let's say a club was prepared to pay $700,000. So I think he's on 1.4, isn't he? But anyway, let's say a club is prepared to pay half David Fifita's contract.
Yeah.
That means the Gold Coast have got to pay $700,000 for a bloke who isn't there. But they also they free up $700,000 to spend. Yeah. Yeah.
The 700, whatever they pay a player, whatever you pay a player to move on, and there is a percentage of your salary cap that you leave to allow for this, because you've got to adjust your roster all the time, and you've got older blokes that need to be moved on, or you've got younger blokes coming through that can do that job, or you can find a cheaper player to do the same job. You've got to have some scope in your salary cap to be moving players on and bringing younger players up. That's how I believe the salary cap gets managed. But whatever you pay the departing player goes in your salary cap, and then you've still got to find 30 players on top of that. So your salary cap gets reduced by that. But I reckon most clubs would have anywhere between 4% and maybe even 10% of their salary cap taken up with payouts to players that are no longer playing with them.
Okay.
And it gets particularly awkward when you're paying for players that are injured and not playing.
Yeah.
Because that's still it's money you've still got to pay, but you get no value out of it in the salary cap. And they say, well, that's why you got 30 players, but it doesn't really work like that. They haven't had to manage salary caps.
Well, but you don't run the Gold Coast, you run Canterbury. But let me just put this to you, right? So would the Titans, for $700,000, what could they pick up? They could get 2 or 3 back rowers.
Yeah,
Good toiler back rowers.
Well, you can get journeymen, who are at the back end and happy to play for 150, 200,000, and they're at the back end of their career. Or you've got some younger emerging players that can be upgraded and extended, so that you don't, you get good value out of them now, so you don't miss out down the track.
So if they can get a couple of hard
you could go and buy an emerging playmaker for that sort of money.
Right.
You could outbid other clubs on an emerging playmaker and take a bit of a gamble on a player like that, depending what they need.
Well, you've spoken here about they desperately need some old hardheads that can come in and put a bit of
and they've gone down. They've gone that with Kieran Four, and they need some defensive grit, is what they need.
So, would you be hypothetically? Would you if you could release David Fifita and soak up $700,000 of his salary to give you $700,000 to spend on a couple?
I don't think he's on 1.4 for a start.
Okay, well, let's say 500,000. You could
but any player. Let's say and it's rare that you should have to move $1 million player. You can't make mistakes at that level. You can make 100 mistakes. I say this all the time. You can make 100 mistakes at anywhere from 80 to 200,000. You're buying players like that and churning them over, emerging players or older players or younger players or people that are just looking to extend their career. You can make 100 of mistakes between 80 and 100 and 200,000. You can't make mistakes at 500,000 and above, because when you make those mistakes, they're the ones that hurt. When you overpay someone, or he's injured, or he's got his form dips, or whatever it is, or he's gone 2 years too long. And we see a lot of that during the course of and we've got a younger player coming up, and now the older bloke can't hold his position, so what do? We have to ride it out. And clubs are always working on this idea of riding out a contract that probably is not working for them at the moment, as opposed to what they could do with that money, or having a younger emerging player coming in. That's the balance of your salary cap management the whole time, which is why I'm so big on development, because you've always got to have those younger blokes coming through, and the system is that you're pushing them out at the top and bringing younger players in at greater value as they come through, and you're going to get your best value out of them. What you're trying to do, at the start of the year, I do an exercise with every club. I go through and list their roster and say, well, they're all spending $9.5 million. All right, everyone's got an equal salary cap. I go through with each individual player, and I said, if I sold that top 30 at market value today, what would I get? Right, so Melbourne Storm, I might get $14 million for all those players. Penrith, I might get $15 million for all those players. Parramatta, I might get $12 million for all those. The Roosters, I might get, but when I go down to the bottom of the ladder, I might get $5.5 million for that. I might get $6 million for that. So they're all spending the same amount of money. So it's not even, because their roster is worth $14-15 million if you sold it at market value today.
Yeah.
Your roster is worth $5 or $6 million. So that's the true difference, and that's what's reflected in the premiership table.
Yeah.
That's what's reflected in our results. Everyone's spending the same amount of money, but it's what your cap is actually worth at this time at market value. And what you'll see the good sides is, particularly Premier. If you went out and put every Panther player on the market today, or every Melbourne Storm player on the market today, or every Parramatta player on the market today, and just let everyone openly bid for them, what do you think they're worth? They're worth a hell of a lot more than $9.5 million.
Yeah.
All right, but if you went to some of the bottom teams and you put all their players up on auction, what would you get for them? Probably nowhere near $9 million. That's the true difference in the competition. That's the true difference in talent.
Fascinating.
And that comes to your development programs and getting value out of younger players at a younger age. So, who are on emerging money. So as they go through their classes, they'll start on development contracts worth about 50 or 60,000, and then they'll go into the top tier, maybe on the lower money at 80 to 110,000, and then they might graduate to a 200,000, a 400,000, a 600,000, $1 million player over time. But if you got them for 3 or 4 years at that really reasonable money, where you can afford 3 or 4 of them, in 3 or 4 years' time, you can only afford one of them, because he's going to get $1 million. And that's why winning puts pressure on your salary cap. So unless you've got that development program coming through underneath, or unless you're very strategic about the younger players or journeymen that you buy, which Melbourne have done very well, Panthers do it through recruitment, through development, Roosters do it through development, and everyone's now understanding that that's going to help your salary cap if you can develop a lot of younger talent and have it in your cap at good value, so that your roster is always worth more than you're paying.
Yeah, right.
So when you get a situation like this, where you've got a player that you've gone out, if you make mistakes at $800 and $1 million, on longer-term contracts, it really stymies you for a period of time. And then it also affects how you can recruit, who you can recruit. It affects everyone.
So how do you keep the players happy? Like, if you say Penrith's roster's worth hypothetically 15 million, they're paying 9. How do you keep that slab of players who are getting under market value happy?
Well, that's the camaraderie and the bond that they've built over a period of time coming through as players together and winning premierships. And players will take less to stay with a premiership winning team or stay with their team. It's only later in their career when they start to say, all right, well, we're all getting squeezed out here. Now it's my turn to go and earn big money. It's my turn to go and earn, And it happened a number of times through my career, at the Bulldogs and at the Roosters and certainly now they're experiencing in other clubs, is that I can go to them and say, well, look, I know what you all want. If you all want it, 2 of you have to go. But if you all are happy to take this, you can go for another 2 or 3 years and maybe win a comp.
Yeah, right.
And every time that's happened, we've won a comp.
All right.
So, and that's where the top sides are at the moment, trying to maintain everyone happy in the performance, in the outcomes. The things you remember when you retire is not the money you earned. I've always said this. It's not. They're the things when your career's over. It's not the money that you earned. It's not the house, the car, the wife, the kids. It's not that you remember out of your career.
I don't know about the kids or the wife. What do I think about that?
No, but you know what I'm saying. Like you're not.
Sorry, darling, I'm keeping my premiership ring.
Yeah, but you remember your career. You remember your career in the camaraderie and the great moments and the wins and all that sort of thing. And that's to stay with a club is. I always say that he wants the house, wife, car, and kids.
Oh, he said that. Brush the wife with the kids. I don't know how we started talking about this,
but this is what we do with players around being professionals and motivation and all that sort of thing. So, I'll sit down with them at the start of the season and say, tell me where you want to be in 5 years' time and tell me what you want to achieve this year. And they all say the same thing. They want to play for Australia. They want to play Origin football. They want a new contract. They want a debut in first grade. They want the house, wife, car, and kids. They want the dream. They want the whole bit. All right. And then I'll ask them to rank themselves in all these attitude things to all parts of their training and all parts of their preparation, all parts of their diet.
And they all give themselves 10?
And they're all giving themselves 6 and 7s. And I say, well, listen, Tiger, this, Australian representative, new contract, blah, 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 housewife, car and kids ain't going to happen if you're giving 6 out of 10 effort in this or 6 out of 10 attention to that or 6 out of 10 to this. We need to raise all this for you to be anywhere near where you think you're going to be in 5 years' time. And that's the motivation. It's not the emotional motivation, they're local derby and all this. It's the motivation of what's my career mean to me, what do I want to achieve and what do I want to get out of this? Why am I doing all this hard work? Why am I training and flogging my body 6 weeks? Why am I making all these sacrifices? Why am I living my life differently to me mates and my family? And why do they have to sacrifice for me to pursue this career? And I do all this hard work. What for? What is it I'm trying to achieve? What's it mean to me? And that's the most powerful motivation. That's what we try to drum into them, that this is your time. And to have a long-standing and successful and sustainable career, it comes with the money. The money looks after itself over time, and then we try to get them to handle their money properly. But it's the motivation that keeps, because it gets hard. It's very, very hard to be an NRL player. And there are so many kids that try, and their dreams are never realised. But and you've got to value your career, and you can't sit back and waste it. And that's what we try to do. That's the form of motivation or commitment we're trying to get from them, not the coach speaking on game day trying to psych them up into some sort of 10-minute performance before they realise it doesn't really mean that much to them. But unless you've got the underlying reason, why am I doing all this hard work? What is it I want to achieve? What does this career actually mean to me? How important is it? You say you'll do anything to be an NRL player. What does that mean? What's your version of anything? And how do you do it? And so what will you sacrifice? Do you kind of want it? Do you half want it? Do you want it when it's good and not so much when it's bad? This is what's going to happen during your career. And they all have good intentions, but good intentions get tested. Getting tested by fatigue, gets tested by injury, gets tested by setbacks, they get tested by environments that are affecting to you, or you're playing with a poor team, or you're not playing your right position, or you're on the bench this week, or you've been dropped to reserve grade, or you've got family issues, or you've got other issues in your life that are affecting your ability to concentrate. A whole lot of things. They all start with good intention, but there is so much that affects what you're trying to do. How do we get onto this subject?
Oh, it's very good.
We got talked about player values. So if you're managing a roster and you want long-term sustainable success, I believe you've got to produce it from within. You've got to develop it and develop that culture and that mindset and that attitude. And then that's how you keep players together over a period of time. Now, there will become a time where maybe the money means more. Maybe they think they have to move if they want to play a different position. Maybe they have to move because, there's a better player coming up and they see him as a bigger future than me. It's all fluid. It's all, you've got to be thinking on your feet the whole time, and you've got to be managing your salary cap around that. That's why you can't be making mistakes with $800,000 million purchases that don't produce the results you want. And I keep saying there are very, very few $1 million players in this game that actually influence results on a regular basis that makes you finals competitive every year. Right? That's what I'm saying. So if you go out and you pay $1.2 million for a rookie forward who's had 30 games because he scores a try every now and then what's James Tedesco worth? What's Nathan Cleary worth?
What's David Fifita worth?
What's Cameron Munster worth?
What's he worth for Fifita?
At the time they signed him for $1.2 million?
No, what's he worth now?
Oh, well, I couldn't tell you.
To wrap up...
No, I don't want to single David out. It's not David's fault he's on that money.
No, of course it's not.
It's not his fault he's on that money.
So to my original question...
But it was harmful to the game.
So if you were running the Titans salary cap and you could release him...
Yeah, I don't want to comment on the Titans salary cap. But if you've got a player... If you had a player that you had to release, all right, what you're saying is I can do more with half that money than I can do with keeping him on the books. Now, at the moment, you've got a player that's on big money with big profile and they play him off the bench. You can't have a bench player on that sort of money. You can't even have a back rower on that sort of money unless he's producing 80-minute performances every week and winning you games and dominating periods of the game. What he has is every now and then the great individual try, but what are you going to pay for that? Or do you want the hard-working defensive player that's going to allow your playmakers their opportunity to, and your attack comes from somewhere else? And these are the things that you've got to weigh up against each other. What are the top playmakers worth? Who influences results? Who actually influences results in your team? And then who are the workers that make that possible? Because if you haven't got the workers in your team, then the other fellas don't get to execute their job either. So you've got to have a balance within your team. You need generals, you need soldiers, you need workers, you need emerging talent, you need youngsters on the way up, you need some older heads on the way out that have been through it all, and and you're trying to build a culture and a personality and a character in your club and in your squad. And you can do that a hell of a lot better if you've had them since 15 and 16 and brought them along the way and taught them the respect for themselves, respect for their teammates, respect for their staff, respect for the game, respect for everybody else, and a bond and a love for each other that they want to go and do this. That's
you're pretty good at this.
Eh?
You're pretty good at this. No wonder everyone in the world wants to sign you.
No,
eh?
That doesn't happen.
You're pretty good. You know your footy. Hazian Gado on AskGus asks, if you were plotting the Rabbitohs game plan to beat the Panthers, what would it be? We've got Kate here who's starting as our new multimedia producer. She wouldn't know about this, but Gus gets sexy with his tactical talk. We call it 0055 6 tackles.
He does. I don't. He does. I don't.
People ring up and pay for this.
No, they don't.
Gus does it in a deep voice.
I'm very old-fashioned.
Go on, Coach.
I'm very old-fashioned.
You're coaching South this week. How are you going to beat Penrith?
You've got to do it with defence, okay? You've got to do it with defence because they're a brilliant attacking team, and that's the first part. And, look at South Sydney through the finals. I said this in the prelim to last week. The two teams in the first round of the finals that showed defensive pride were the Panthers and Souths, who happened to be the grand finalists the previous year. South Sydney only conceded 14 points to the Roosters, despite being down to 11 men twice and 12 men on a couple of occasions as well. They had a defensive mindset. And last week against the Sharks, the Sharks the previous week had a 30-all draw with Cowboys. No one cared about defence. South went to that semi-final last week with a defensive mindset and conceded 2 tries, one from a crossfield kick and the other from a 90-metre intercept. So they never breached their line at all night, which was brilliant. So South need to take that. If you go back over the last 2 years, these two teams have met in a preliminary final and a grand final. There's been 4 points of difference and 2 points of difference. South Sydney have been able to get into the grind with them and stay with them in that respect. It's all about where you give the opposition the ball and how you give it to them. If they can control the ball, get their kick chase tackle right, and make the Panthers keep working off their own line, then they're going to be dealing with a lot less than if they're turning it over with penalties or drop balls or scrums or line dropouts and having to deal with the fancy stuff that Panthers can throw at you.
Does South have the discipline to do that?
Of course they do. They've proven it. I think there's still a difference between these two teams, but South Sydney have got to have a defensive mindset. It's going to depend a hell of a lot on field position, on where this game is played. All right, they can't be turning the ball over in their own half of the field. They can't be giving away penalties. They can't be giving away turnovers. They can't lose control of where Penrith gets the ball. So that's you can handle 75% of your defensive worries right there if you keep giving the ball on kick chase. If you keep giving it on kick chase, you can control the sort of football they play. If you start giving away penalties or drop balls or turnovers or intercepts, or you've got no control over the game, right? They're dictating to you with the good stuff. When they come at you with the good stuff, they've shown they just blow everyone away. So when it gets to the good stuff, how are we going to defend it? All right. From what I've seen, just the teams that have at least competed, and very few have competed with Panthers over the last couple of years, and even fewer have beaten them. I think you've got to have an inside-out mindset with your defence. I don't think you can rush them from outside in. I don't think you can do it with heroes trying to rush out of the line and make defensive decisions, or wingers racing in, or centres and wingers racing in, or trying to get up, because what they'll do is they're too talented, they're too skillful, they've got too much variety, they've got the chip kick, they've got overhead passes, they've got big blokes that can go through the line and unload. They know how to play against that type of defence, and because they're relentless with it, you end up wearing yourself out, trying to come up with that speed line the whole time. You do need to get up off your line. Everyone does, whether you're playing an aggressive up and inside style of where you're trying to cut your opponent off all the time. But I do think they need to play inside out a little bit. I think that they need to be very predictive of where the ball's going, look at the triggers of where the ball might be going, and that's hard because Api Coruscant is so clever around the middle. But if you can defend them from inside out so that your outside backs are buying time, and there have been a few occasions where Souths have done this really well with the Panthers, that's going to give you your best chance. To do that, though, you need a really fit, really mobile pack of forwards, because they're going to do a hell of a lot more running in that sort of style of defence because they've really got to keep putting pressure from the inside. You're going to have to pressure Nathan Cleary on his fifth tackle options. They'll have other players that can kick with Luai and those sort of fellas. They're a great side. The Panthers, not going to be easy, but I would have to start with the defence. My whole mindset this week would be on the defence, because I don't have to worry about the attack. Cody Walker, Latrell Mitchell, Damien Cook, they'll come up with it. There's some little things I'd work on in attack that I think have been effective, and there's some things that Panthers are going to have to come to terms with, but they've controlled South Sydney pretty well every time they've played them in that respect. They do a good job on them. They'll do a good job on Latrell Mitchell. They'll probably show you how Latrell Mitchell should be played. Well, at least that's what I'm anticipating Friday night. But yeah, so it's a long answer to your question. But I would do it with a defensive mindset, and that starts your defensive mindset. You can take out 75% of your cares by making sure they're getting the ball down their end of the field every time you give it to them. If you give it to them from penalties and turnovers, and because you're not controlling possession, well, you can kiss it goodbye. They'll just run away from you. You're not going to hold them out.
There we go. Is that all? Can I hang up now?
Well,
It cost me $334 to listen to that, but I'm worth every cent.
Who's going to listen to that? People have just gone to sleep on the podcast. What are you talking about?
I'm taking 20% of this, making a fortune. Does the winner of the comp come out of that game?
Yes. Well, I think the winner of the comp is Panthers. I think Panthers win that game and they win whatever the grand final. The danger is, and this happens every now and then, we get to the preliminary final weekend and you say, well, the winner's going to come out of that game. They can do each other a lot of damage in that game, and then you've got to back up and do it again the following week against a newbie. So you've got a Parramatta or a Cowboys that haven't been in the grand finals for a while. So it's going to be assumed that whoever wins the Rabbitoh Panther game is going to be favourites in the grand final. So it's kind of like you've got such a big game this weekend, and the winner of this is expected probably to go on and win the competition, but you've still got another grand final to go. And I've seen it on occasions where sometimes you don't come up the second week, but they're both pretty experienced now. I don't think that'll be an issue with these two teams, and I do expect the premiership winner to come out of that game.
All right, we'll have a look at the other one on the other side of trivia. But I've got some breaking news here on Six Tackles with Gus. Joseph Suaalii has committed to play for Samoa in the Rugby League World Cup.
Right.
So Crichton's committed to, he's Samoan as well, isn't he?
Yep.
Born and up here.
Yep.
Now Joseph Suaalii. So all these contenders for Kangaroos jumpers are They're all committing to their countries of heritage.
Which is how it should be. That's how it should be. All power to them.
Mm.
That's how it should be. They'll have a good team.
Oh,
So
well,
might.
what?
New Zealand, Tonga, have a good team.
Could see one of them making the World Cup final, actually.
Mm.
Six tackle trivia, Gus. On this day, in 1975, the Roosters etched their names into the Rugby League history books with a 38-0 grand final victory over the Dragons, one of the great club teams.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur Beetson, captain.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Gibson was coach. Who scored the first try?
You serious?
Well, Middo said you'd know this.
How's this a trivia question?
What do you mean, how's it a trivia question? It's a trivia question.
Who scored the first try?
Middo said you'd know this.
It would be running towards the... Well, how would I know that? 1975, please. Running towards the naval stand. I don't know. Johnny Mays.
Oh, he's got it! You got it! You knew that. You're a bullshit artist. You knew
no,
that.
I didn't.
You've just carried on like you didn't know that and you knew it the whole way along. We'll take a break and come back. Johnny Mays. As if you
Little
ever
halfback used to
know
run
that.
with his shoulder. Little...
He's a halfback.
Yeah.
You knew that. You're impossible. So Parramatta, gee, they put up with some internal drama there. I mean, I even saw a column earlier in the week saying that if they don't win this game, it's a failure of a season and the coach might be gone before they've even started plotting the tactics for this week.
Oh, mate, you don't believe everything you read. Honestly, there are agendas within agendas, and there are personalities, and people think they're more important than they are, or they're trying to settle old scores, or they're trying to support other people. It's very, very funny. Success has 1,000 fathers. Failure is an orphan. No one wants to be associated with it.
So they're going to have their captains run today, Wednesday, and then they'll get a charter flight up to Townsville and try to pull off the hit and run mission. They're on a bit of a roll. Well, I don't know if you could say that. They got beat by Penrith pretty comprehensively in the first week, but they were far too good for Canberra. All the while, North Queensland have sat back and watched it all unfold. I'm thinking the origin experience of those Cowboys blokes is going to hold them in really good stead for this weekend. It's been a rapid rise for them, but, you know, they were thrown into that cauldron and they've passed with flying colours. It's a fascinating game, this one. Fascinating.
Certainly is. I've got my own theory, though. If we go back to the first week of the semi-finals, the Cowboys played the Sharks, did they not?
Yep.
Okay. And they were sort of the new kids on the block, weren't they? Both of them up at that top four level. And I said at that time, after that weekend of football, that was probably the lesser of the finals that weekend. It was the one I didn't think really measured up to an NRL semi-final standard, simply because the defensive resolve of the two teams wasn't good enough. I said that the two teams that did show defensive resolve that weekend were the Panthers and South Sydney, and they just so happened to be last year's grand finalists as well. And that was borne out this week with South Sydney with their great defensive performance against the Sharks. Now, the Sharks didn't score a try against South. And the bomb where the ball was flicked back, I don't count those. And a 90-metre intercept, all that's good. Yeah, but they didn't actually breach the line with any of their attack. Yet they scored 30 points against the Cowboys.
Yeah. And
probably could have scored more. All right, so if I go comparing South Sydney's defence to Cowboys' defence, and then thinking, well, what Sharks did to them, what are Parramatta going to do to them? All right, that's where my mindset is. I don't think the quality of that final, I don't think measured up with the quality of what the others are doing. If Sharks were able to put 30 points on the Cowboys, and Sharks couldn't breach the line against South, all right?
It's like you read the form guide.
Yeah, it would lead me to think that there are significant problems in the Cowboys' defensive line, which, if you've got significant problems, the last team you want to be playing is the Parramatta Eels.
What about the home ground factor? They won 8 of 9.
Yeah, it's grass, mate. Between the sidelines and the try lines, that's all that matters. Doesn't matter where it is or who's yelling for who. It doesn't matter. If you're playing at this level and you're worried about who you're playing against on what ground. I mean, if you're worried about where you're playing and what the crowd's saying and all that, you've lost it. The crowd can't influence the result unless they jump the fence. They can't. It's just us against them, 13 aside, same sideline, same try line, same grass. We do this every week. This is what we do for a living. We're under lights. Big game, yeah, a lot of pressure, yeah. Crowd, ignore it. They can't change the result. They can change your thinking They can change the way you talk to yourself. They can change the way you communicate with each other if you let them. It can exaggerate the bad if that's the way it's going, if you're mentally weak. But I don't expect Parramatta to be mentally weak at all. I expect them to handle this environment. If the environment's going to beat you, then you shouldn't be playing. That's the way I think about football. I don't think in terms of home and away. And I don't like to prepare players for anything different. You know, if you're going to play Origins, you want to play at Suncorp Stadium and you win, you've got to have a different mindset because no one's going to be cheering for you up there. No one in Townsville's going to be cheering for Parramatta. There'll be some there, I guess, but you know, it will be a hostile environment. But deal with it. They can't influence the play. They cannot, unless they jump the fence. They can't influence the play. Yeah. If it influences the referee, we've got the wrong referee. We've got the wrong officials. I don't think
Grant Atkins is doing that.
I don't think they're going to be taking sides because of what the crowd says. So we've got the professional referee and we've got the professional players. Wouldn't matter who they're cheering for, who they're booing for. You know, now if you get behind and you start to hear them and you're sitting in the in goal there and you can hear them, you know, sledging you and do all that, well then your mind's not on the game and you're gone. You're isolated in your own thoughts and you know, it's going to break your team up. But if they stick together and show the resolve, I'm not putting any points down for the home ground advantage whatsoever. I think Parramatta should handle that. And I think given what Sharks did to Cowboys' defence, and then what Sharks couldn't do to the South Sydney defence, confirms to me that was a lesser standard final than the other game. It rated lower. And I'm thinking if Sharks put 30 on Cowboys, what will Parramatta do?
Okay.
Now, can we see Parramatta conceding 30 points to the Cowboys?
Maybe.
Well, bad Parramatta might. They turn up, but it's the wrong time of year for bad Parramatta to make.
I thought it was interesting, Brad Arthur on 100% Footy saying, you asked him the question if he could see bad Parramatta coming out during the week, and he said, well, the way we train is the way we play. I wonder how they've trained this week.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you know, this is up to the players, and this is what I mean. You know, about emotional motivation and real motivation and why we do this and why we are. And you know, I say to them, you know, when you have to fill out a form and it asks for your occupation, what do you say? There it is, occupation. What do you write down? Professional footballer. Okay, what's that mean? That means a whole lot of things. You know, and they need to understand what that means. And being a professional footballer means you get yourself prepared, you can walk into a hostile environment and still execute your game plan, still execute your play. You know, defence is big in finals. Parramatta need to find that defensive resolve and hold the Cowboys at bay. And if they do, I don't think they're going to have any trouble scoring points.
Would you, and the way you've just spoken there, it's very coachy again, I'm loving it. Would you be addressing the away game thing with Parramatta this week, or would you just ignore it?
No, it's always a part of, you know, so part of what I do, you know, winning starts on Monday. We address what the week's going to look like. Winning starts on Monday. These are the days we're going to train. These are the days you're going to do recovery. These are the meals we're going to eat. This is the massage times we're going to have. This is the appearances we have to do for media. These are the commitments we have to have for club and sponsors and all that sort of thing. This is what I'm going to, and then it's going to be travel. We're going to travel on Friday or Thursday or whenever it is, and it's a bus to the airport and it's a plane and then it's a bus out to the ground and we're going to be staying at this hotel and then we're going to be training or doing a captain's run at this venue, or we're not. We're going to do the captain's run here and go up, and that's why we're going to do it. We plan the week out meticulously to kick off. So when we get up there at 8 o'clock and let's kick off on next Friday night, bang, we're timed to the minute. Winning starts on Monday. You get all that out of the way. That's what it's going to look like, boys. That's your program. Here it is. Everyone buy in? Yep. Anyone got any problems? No. Anyone need any special meals? No. All good. Let's go. And then we go and execute it. All right. And when the game's over, this will be your recovery. This will be the swim. This will be the this. This is coming home on that time. You know, we're playing in the grand final the week after. Next week's going to look a little bit different, so we need to be back here and ready on Sunday morning, ready to go again whenever it is. You know, so that's you sort of you plan it in the positive with everything you're doing, and that's what I mean. Winning starts on Monday. That's what you should be doing, and you're prepared for whatever. So whether you're playing South Sydney at Redfern Oval or you're playing Canberra in Canberra, Melbourne in Melbourne, you know, someone else in Darwin, or you know, you're playing away from home at Suncorp Stadium or at home at Parramatta Stadium in front of 50,000 people, you're prepared for what the week is to entail. But at the end of it, it's a game of football that's played between the sidelines and the try lines. That's where it'll be decided by those players who are on the field. The 26 players who are on the field, not the referee, not the crowd, not the media, not the television, not anyone else who wants to comment it during the week. It means nothing. Those people don't get on the field because they're not good enough to be on the field. This is what will decide it. Our 13 against their 13. And this is the way the game is going to be played, and this is how we're going to win it, and this is what they're going to throw at us. And so you're constantly focused in on that role there. not everything else that's going on around you. If you start listening to magazine shows and reading newspapers and listening to radio and doing all that sort of thing, and that influences the way you think, or your dad not suddenly wants to be a coach, or your old coach from under sixes is ringing up and telling you to remember to do this and do that, and Arnie Beryl you haven't seen for 10 years wants a ticket to the grand final. All these sort of things will be distractions around you, but you have to be prepared for that because you are a what? You are a professional footballer. I deal with these things so that I can execute to the best of my ability.
Told you, Kate. It's good, isn't it?
Eh?
0055 6 tackles. It's happening next year. Are you playing them meals?
Of course.
Really?
Of course.
You give them their meals?
Breakfast and lunch every day.
So they've got to get their own dinner?
Or most days, yeah, they get their own dinner, but some take packages home to get their dinner. Some are on...
This is too good.
Some are on meal services,
Meal services, what's that mean?
Delivered meal services, prepared meals.
Get me on that. What sort of stuff can you get?
The ones, good, lean meats and vegetables and salads and the type of nutrition you need and the type of fluids you need. And the ones that do it really well do it for... You don't think the really good ones are doing this? They're meticulous.
No.
Oh. They're meticulous about their preparation.
Sensational.
Meticulous about their preparation. But, and not all players buy into it.
I was just going to say that. There's the odd... How many of them sneak up the road to get a Macca's every now and then?
Oh, Josh Adokar goes up and gets a schnitzel every day.
Oh.
Doesn't look any worse
Doesn't
for it.
affect him.
Doesn't affect him. But he, it's you have your cheat days where they'll go and have something to eat by themselves. But if they want to be right, if their body fat percentage and their mentality and knowing that they've done the right thing, I remember hearing from Ian Thorpe one day. Ian Thorpe was Australia's greatest swimmer, brilliant. When he got on the blocks and he would be, with the other competitors on the blocks and they were in the final race and that sort of thing, and he'd stand on the blocks and he would say to himself, "I know I've done the work. They'll want to have done it too, otherwise they're not in the race." And that's how he would feel. I've done everything I can, and that's what I say to you. I would do anything to win this. Well, what's that mean?
Yeah.
You kind of want it. You just want it when you think about it, or you just want it when it's good. You want it when things are going well for you. Can you hang in there and never give up when things aren't going well for you? Can you keep doing it? It's all very deep, mate. It's more than what this game is. So much more than what you read in the media or hear on magazine shows or so-called experts. There is so much behind it that is of real interest. And it's important. It's drumming that into players as well. That this is what they need to be listening to and what they need to be doing. And I think it's only in recent times that our game has really come to terms with full-time professionalism. I think you would be amazed at the lengths some of our footballers go to prepare themselves to play the type of football that they do. And the ones who don't, they get left behind.
Any meals left over? I'm happy to.
There's always a meal left over. We always order too much. We always cook too much. Some of the staff go and eat it. Some people take it home for dinner. Some of the young blokes, that are living in our houses and that sort of thing, might take it home after the first grade are finished. You always get fed. That's one thing that'll happen.
Okay, our mates at Bluebet.
Unlike me, who has 10 meetings a day in coffee shops and restaurants all over Australia and
gets the Chinese on the way home.
Relentless. I need 2 months in a warm climate somewhere.
Well, we can fix that for you.
That's what I need.
Any betting odds mentioned today in the podcast are correct as of 11 a.m, September 21. They are subject to change. Bet responsibly. North Queensland $1.70. Parramatta $2.15. I'm hearing Opacek won't play. That was the vibe I got last night from Brad Arthur.
Yeah.
So Simonson or Niokore to come into the team.
Yep.
Bryce Cartwright's got a spot on the bench too, with Makatoa dropping out and all sweet with North Queensland.
Everyone rises to the occasion this time of year. We've had some blowouts in the finals. It's hard in the finals because when you're in those sudden death games and you get behind and you realise you're not going to win, it's hard to stay gritty to the end. And that's why we see some blowout scorelines at this time of year in those types of games. So, I wouldn't be surprised if whoever wins these two games, it's pretty one-sided. Yeah.
So you're tipping Para?
I think Parramatta will beat Cowboy.
By how much?
I think Parramatta can score 5 tries. I think Cowboys maybe 2 or 3.
Para by margin for Gus. There you go. I should mention too, we're on air at 7 p.m. Friday and Saturday nights. Peter Pasoltis is heading up to Townsville to call that game Friday, and I'm on deck for Saturday at Accor Stadium.
What were my pre-season predictions? You were going to tell me what they were.
Well, let's just finish this.
Right.
Panthers on Bluebet, $1.35. South Sydney, $3.20. Havili is out. Tom Burgess obviously suspended, so there's a bit of pressure there on the middle forwards. And the big one is Alex Johnston, hip flexor. Not sure he'll make it.
And that's the wear and tear of not finishing in the top four and having to win so many games back to back and week to week. I would think to beat this Panthers team at this stage of their development and with the form that they've shown over the last 2 or 3 years, you would have to be at full strength and you would have to be at optimum capacity. You would have to be playing the best that you can play. I don't know that South can produce that this weekend. They have got the triple X factor, Latrell Mitchell, but if anyone's going to handle Latrell Mitchell either strategically or with the type of effort it's going to take to cancel him out of equation, then I'm sure this Panthers team can do it. So I think Panthers will be too good for them. I think that South Sydney are worthy preliminary finalists. They've come on at the back end of the year. I don't think I rated them this highly at the start of the year. I thought that Adam Reynolds would be a loss. The young halfback's done a good job, but there's still an element to this competition that's not quite up to measure, which means they got themselves into a good position late in the year, and Latrell has been able to provide the X factor. He wasn't even that great against the Sharks. You know why? They didn't have to be. He sort of, as long as the rest of the Sharks team is doing all their effort stuff, Latrell can provide the difference. But he realised he didn't even have to do much last week. His goal kicking was brilliant. He had a couple of runs here and there and a couple of defensive moments, but he was nowhere near it on all full cylinders against the Sharks.
Panthers by how many?
I think same thing. I think Panthers can get 4 tries. Rabbitoh 1 or 2.
Okay. You reckon that one might be closer than the other game?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I think, but I think Panther and Eel will play the grand final, and I think I said that before the start of the final series. I thought that was
Did you?
At the start of the final series.
Did you say? Oh, right.
Start of the final series. Yeah.
What about the start of the season? What did you say at the start? What did you say at the start of the season? You're saying the Panthers are the team to beat. Who's up there with them?
Eels.
Yeah.
Definitely Eels. They're my 2 picks at the moment. Then you've obviously got Storm, Roosters. I'm taking South out of that equation, probably replacing them with Sharks. I tipped Sharks. Eh? That a good year.
Panther, Eel,
Eel grand final.
Well
I said before the final, Panther, Eel grand final.
You did take Souths out, though, so they might put egg
I
on
did.
your face.
They've actually done better than I thought. They've done better than I thought. And they've done it in the back half of the season. There were some really worrying times during the course of the season where their defence was just leaking points.
I've got a couple of quick Ask Gus, and one of them's on South Sydney, actually, before we wrap up. Emmanuel says, does Jason Demetriou come into contention for Coach of the Year, replacing Wayne, new captain, new halfback, managing big personalities? Unlike Sharks and Cowboys coaches, he had the pressure of building on the strong foundations Wayne Bennett had left.
Yeah, I always find the Coach of the Year thing very subjective. I mean, at the end of the day, the Coach of the Year is the bloke who wins it, I suppose. But I've never believed in Coach of the Year awards. I don't.
Yeah.
I've never really looked.
But he's done a stellar job.
Done a brilliant job. He really has. And under difficulty too. And he might still win this yet. You don't know. They've been close the last few years. They've had 5 preliminary finals in 5 years. The last 5 years. So
that's amazing, isn't it?
They know this journey pretty well. I just think they've run. And I think, if South were playing Parramatta or Cowboys on the other side of the draw, I think they'd be winning too. It's just that they're going to meet Panthers in the preliminary final this week. So the way the draw's fallen, they're on Panthers' side of the draw. I think if South were playing Parramatta and Cowboys right now, they'd beat both.
Okay.
But that's why I think the winner comes out of this Rabbitoh Panther preliminary final.
We've got some finals too in NRLW. The Broncos missed the finals for the first time in NRLW history after they were beaten by Parramatta at the weekend. The Roosters clinched the minor premiership, and the Eels get a start in the finals for the first time. So we've got Newcastle versus Dragons at Sunday at 2 p.m.
They played last week.
That old weird one again, hey?
Yeah.
And we've got the Roosters versus Para. So you'll see all of that here on 9. To wrap up, a question for you from Guy. What was it like in the sheds before and on the field during the infamous 1981 Newtown Jets versus Manly Sea Eagles semi-final at the SCG?
I'd say Guy's heard me tell this at a luncheon somewhere.
Has he?
Yeah.
You can wrap up today's.
No,
With
it takes
memory lane.
too long. Takes too long.
Was it a bit rough and tumble? Have you got an abbreviated version?
No, it all revolves around Tommy Rodonicus. Dearly
Well, go
departed friend. No, it takes too long. Takes too long. And you got to swear because otherwise it doesn't have the. That's what's a good one at dinners and
We've
lunches.
got a beep, haven't we?
I think old mate's heard me do it at a luncheon.
Has he?
I'll do it next week. I'll give
Okay.
you the Manly Newtown story next
Okay,
week.
there's a teaser. Nice work. Enjoy the weekend of footy. We'll have a grand final to talk about this time next week. Gus reckons it'll be Panther v Eel. That would be something.
Battle of the Golden West.
That would be something.
Battle of the Golden West.
All
I
right.
thought we were going to lose it to the AFL and the soccer and all that. The Panthers and the Eels, we fought back.
Just don't take too much credit.
Prophets
for it,
of doom. Prophets of doom.
Gus. See you next week.
Bye.
You know the score. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly. Call 1 800 858 858 or your local state gambling helpline.